Hello and welcome to Startline Stories, brought to you by the team from Speed on Screen. This is the second topic. We covered sprinting in the first one, and today we're going to cover Autosolo with our guest Haydn Marks and driving as an under 17-year-old. It's always great for those who are watching live on YouTube. If you'd like to engage with us, please use the comments field. We'll keep an eye on those comments and bring those comments and questions indeed in during the course of the session. If you're listening to the podcast, then that won't be possible, but you can contact us using the email speedonscreen@gmail.com. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share details of these events with your friends who might be interested. It'd be fantastic to have you aboard. So, turning first of all to Autosolo, I'll introduce Haydn very shortly, but just to give a fundamental outline of what an Autosolo is. Sometimes people refer to it as a car park Grand Prix. It's, however, at slower speeds than a Grand Prix, markedly so, and the course is marked out by cones, and there are various things to help you find the correct way around the course, and I'll ask Haydn to explain those in a bit. Over the course of a day, there will be multiple different tests, and you'll have multiple goes at them, which means you can afford to make a mistake along the way. And then dropping some scores, you'll take your best total times, and that will determine the results for the overall event and with classes. There are various sorts of places these can take place: large car parks, airfields, kart tracks, which we'll come to later. If you were here for the sprinting podcast, think of it as a bit like sprinting, but quite a lot slower. So the sort of skills that you need to take part are being very precise, good car control, good consistency, planning your route and trying to remember it. And the absolutely fantastic news is that basically any road going car is suitable. And we'll ask Haydn in a bit for both cars that he's driven and cars that he's seen on events. So that's a very basic introduction. If you've got any comments, if you've got any questions, please contribute them during the session. Now, Haydn is a very experienced Autosolo driver, so fantastic to welcome him aboard, and hopefully his picture will pop up very soon. Good evening, Haydn.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, and welcome. So, yeah, in your case, you're both a competitor and an organizer, aren't you? So we'll get into some of the details in a bit. I've painted a very broad outline, simply in words, of what an Autosolo's like. I remember going to watch one before I ever did one. I watched one of the ones in one of the big Silverstone car parks, and I thought what it might be useful to do is, with all your experience, starting as a competitor, would you like to walk us through the typical day of an Autosolo and try and bring it to life and paint that picture of what it would be like for a newcomer? Because these are absolutely, I mean, first and fundamentally, actually, isn't it? These events, you must have seen many newcomers get started.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've been doing them probably now pushing 20 years, I think, since I did the first one. Always retained a fairly similar format in that time. Typical day, you'll arrive fairly early in the morning, unload your car, make sure it's all good to go. You'll go to scrutineering, where they'll check your vehicle, make sure it's safe, basic checks on it, make sure your tyres are all okay and legal.
Yes, just hopping back a sec, what sort of things have you brought with you to the Autosolo? I know people bring differing amounts of kit. Well, what typically would you bring to an Autosolo?
Yeah, when I first started, it was a very basic toolkit. You know, just your screwdriver, spanners, socket set, couple of sort of very basic spares like oil and water, stuff like that. As I sort of progressed, then I generally have a spare set of wheels and tires as well. just in case I get to the end of the day and I've ruined some and I need something to drive home on again. Also progressed into one of those little sort of one-man pop-up tents. I always found those quite handy for keeping the stuff in. So if the weather just decided to turn a bit nasty, at least you can keep your stuff dry through the day. And typically a packed lunch as well. It's always it's always a good thing to have.
Few snacks.
Yeah, snacks.
Are you bringing your packed lunch, or do you know there's going to be a burger van there?
Yeah, absolutely. See, most events do have catering on site as well, but not always. So if and it usually will say that in the regs and your final instructions for the event anyway.
Yes.
But
and the important thing in there as well, isn't it, is that you've, if I understood you correctly, you've driven the car to the event.
Absolutely, yeah. That is one of the rules. That's always been in there. It's basically a thing to help keep the costs down, because and a lot of the venues can be quite sort of small in the paddock area. So if everybody turned up on the trailer, trying to squeeze it all in would become a problem. But typically during the day, you shouldn't really be damaging your car to such an extent that you're going to not be able to drive it home. You will get the odd breakdown, you know, it's inevitable, it's life. But in all the probably literally hundreds of events I've done, I've only ever had to call the recovery service once. So that's quite a good record for me there, really.
That is a good record. So sorry, you've unloaded the car, you've gone through scrutineering, and for people who aren't familiar with scrutineering, what's that for and what will be looked for, please?
Yeah, basically the event organisers will have their nominated scrutineer. They'll just do a basic check over your car, make sure it's safe to run, basically. So they'll be checking your tyres, making sure they're safe, and also not anything that's on the list of banned tyres. So you can't have any like the sticky track day rubber sort of stuff. It's, you know, basically road tyres is the going thing. Check your batteries safe and secure. That's not going to fly out and cause any damage or any issues during the day. Basic check on your steering and brakes, make sure they're operating correctly. Make sure you haven't got any loose items in the car, because when you're driving around, you will be, you know, taking corners quite tightly and, you know, putting a fair amount of force in. So the last thing you want is your air freshener suddenly flying across the dashboard and hitting you in the eye.
I was more worried about your packed lunch still being in the boot.
Absolutely, you don't want the the contents of your sandwiches across the back seat. So yeah, so as long as your car's all good and you pass scrutineering, you can then generally go and sign on, and you'll get your paperwork and your numbers to put in your cars and things like that. If you haven't already printed them off already, a lot of the clubs now will send stuff out, paperwork in advance. A lot of that came from the pandemic, when we had to stop touching things.
Yep.
We moved to a lot of stuff online in advance to events, and that seems to have carried on.
And apart from the numbers, what will typically be in the pack of paperwork?
You'll probably get in there your entry list, so you can see, you know, your competitors and who's driving what, who's in what group. You'll have a marshalling rota, which will detail when you're marshalling, when you're driving, when you're resting. Because your format on each test is you'll normally be split into 3 groups, so that which then run around on a rotational basis, to make sure people are always doing something, like I say, which is either driving, marshalling, or resting, and then that keeps the event flowing through then. Okay,
and I guess it means it's never a dull moment, really.
Absolutely, you've always got something to do, really. So it keeps the day. It's not just a load of you know, drive for a bit and then sit around. You know, you're straight away doing something else. So you actually do end up quite busy during the day.
Yes, and when you're marshalling, sort of 2 questions really. Number 1, what are you looking for? And number 2, what can you learn while you're doing it?
What you're looking for is basically making sure that the other competitors out on course, they've firstly gone the right route. So they've gone the correct side of the cones and passed the cones in the correct order. And also, you're also looking to see if they strike any cones, because that would also incur a penalty.
Okay, so if Andy, who's not appearing on screen, can
Mhm.
bring up an image, hopefully, because cones are at the heart of the way the course is structured, aren't they?
Absolutely, it's how we define them.
Yes, yes, and as if by magic, thank you, Andy.
There we go. So
And
yeah,
so,
so
what are those elements there that you can identify?
so
For us, Hayden?
your typical cone setup on most events will be as you see there. So you'll have your upright cone with the number on the top. So the number that obviously tells you which number cone it is. So normally they'll go from one upwards, unless you're doing the course in reverse, then they'll go numbers back down.
And when you say the reverse, just for clarity, you mean the
You'll be
reverse,
driving the opposite
direction,
direction.
don't you,
Yeah,
rather than
that's it.
in reverse gear?
Indeed, there shouldn't be any reversing in an Autosolo.
Go on, be honest. Have you ever reversed an Autosolo?
Oh, countless times.
Yeah, same here.
Absolutely. I've been backwards on the grass and all sorts.
Sorry, I digress. So you're following the course by numbers in either ascending or descending order. Yes.
Correct, absolutely. And the yellow cone you can see there that's lying horizontally, that tells you which side of the upright cone to go. So where you see that car position there, that is the correct way around that cone that he's going there.
Excellent. So no penalties to apply there.
No, and he hasn't hit it yet, so he's all good for now.
Excellent. And because Andy won't forgive us. Andy, by the way, on the opening screen appears with a helmet on, so we can't see his face. Excuse me. And this week he's largely lost his voice, which is why he's not co-hosting with me tonight. So we hope you feel better soon, Andy. Thank you for that picture. The one thing we didn't mention, and I know you'll pick me up on it afterwards, is in the background was the location known as Field of Sheep from the Grand Tour events filmed at Rawton in Wiltshire.
Indeed.
So if you thought that looked familiar, that would be why. So we've got a course laid out with cones. Thank you for that. And in terms of learning the course, how do you get to grips with where you're expected to go?
Well, before you drive any course, all competitors are allowed to walk the course first. So that's a good time to really take note of what you're doing. You'll have enough time generally to walk it a couple of times, and I recommend you do. What I tend to do when I'm walking the course is I'm looking as sort of far ahead as I can to sort of pick routes through cones, and I tend not to remember the entire course, so to speak. I tend to just pick out sort of key points. So where there's like a really tight turn, where you might not have the next cone is going to be in your direct line of sight, I'll tend to remember, say, got cone 12, take a real tight left sort of thing, and then the rest of it, if it's laid out well, you should just be able to be picking up the cones as you go along. Also, another good way of learning things in the course is when you're marshalling and when you're just watching. Just pay attention to where competitors are maybe slightly making a little bit of a mistake, if they're slightly overshooting or they're taking things a bit wide. You think, oh, when I get my turn on there, if I just back it off a little bit, or if I just push a little bit harder there, or turn a little bit tighter there, then maybe I could pick up a tenth or two.
Yes. So in a way, the marshalling isn't a time to relax. It's a time to learn and try and get a bit of competitive advantage.
Very, very much so. Absolutely.
Yes. And will the groups always run in the same order through the day?
Depends on the club and the event. Some will just run a set rota on every course layout. Others will vary it slightly. So sometimes you'll be going in the first group, sometimes you'll be in the second group out, sometimes in the third group out. So that is purely just down to the organising club and how they've decided to run it, really.
Okay, and I guess that'll all be laid out in this set of paperwork you've been given.
That'll all be detailed for you in your rota, so you should know what's coming.
Okay, so you've walked the course, you've got your map. You get to the start line the first time. What's going through your mind? What are you thinking? What are you planning?
Absolutely. I'm generally my method of attack is because you normally get 3 runs on each course, and your best 2 times from those 3 runs will count towards your final score. So if you make a mistake on one run, it's not the end of the world. Some people tend to sort of go a bit slower on the first run and then build upon that into their second and third runs. I'm of the method where I just basically just give it the full beans on the first one, find where I need to back off a little bit, and try and find the limit as soon as I can, and then work on that.
Okay, and Andy's put up there from the Motorsport UK Blue Book, as it's colloquially known, or Yearbook, as it's formally known, an example. So drawing number 23 there is a probably slightly simplified course. Now, bearing in mind, for those on podcasts, it's not going to be visible to them, but I would describe it as a line going around blocked off areas and cones. Sometimes you go multiple sides. You go past multiple cones on the same side as a sort of big sweeping bend, and then there could be sections that are more like a slalom, and you're alternating between cones, or possibly pairs of cones, or possibly different combinations. How do you try and lock those in your brain, or is this down to the numbers and the yellow cones lying on the side as reminders?
Yeah. I mean, because Autosolo itself has, I suppose, evolved from an auto test, really. Where an auto test, you really will have a very, very technical layout, and the cones aren't numbered, so you do have to do it to test your memory as well. Autosolo shouldn't be a test of memory. It should be basically a nicely laid out, flowing course that's easy to follow, and you'll win or lose basically by driving neat and tidy around it, and finding those tenths of a seconds by just taking the right line and capitalizing on what's there, really. So
yes, and I think that's a point worth repeating, actually, isn't it? It's not intended to be a memory test. If the course is designed reasonably intuitively, and we might get onto course design a bit later when we talk about the Shennington event that you're involved with, then it should be a test of precision and driving skill, not a memory test, which again I guess is why it attracts newcomers.
Yeah, I mean, it also, I think it keeps a lot of people who've done it for a long time as well. I mean, I'm certainly one of those. I've never really got on that well with auto tests, because I'm one of those people that I walk up the stairs, get into the room, and wonder why I've made that journey.
Well, you made it in front of the camera and the microphone, which is good.
Absolutely. So to try and remember a full test is just too difficult for me, really. But if it's all numbered and structured, I can just follow that and go for it. So that makes it, I think, a lot more enjoyable for some people as well.
Yes, brilliant. Okay, so we've had 3 goes at one test, taken our best 2 times.
Yeah.
What comes next?
We then go and speak to all our mates and compare and contrast what times we've done, and have a bit of banter with them, and tell each other to go faster if they want to beat us.
Which, of course, is actually a really important part of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much
of Club Motorsport.
Yeah, it's very much a social event as well as a competitive one. I mean, I've made some great friends over the years, and I very much enjoy seeing them on the day as much as actually driving the car.
Yes.
So. But anyway,
we're given the example of counting 2 runs out of 3. Again, it's something you need to understand, because there's some discretion with the individual event organisers as to whether they count all the runs or allow a drop score.
Yeah.
So again, it's part when you should understand that at the time you enter. And I guess actually it's a reminder. Always read the regulations, as they're called, the details of the event when you put it out, and always read the paperwork that comes out the week before, the final instructions, Always worth reading that as well. Not least to find out when the gate's going to close, if you're getting into a venue that's going to get the gate closed behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important to be on time. It just makes the whole day run smoother.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you've had a good catch up with your mates. You've either been slightly proud that you've done well, which is probably your typical scenario, or you've commiserated with someone who's had a not such a good experience. And then what happens next?
Indeed. So then the course will be changed for the next layout. Typically, most clubs run a format where they'll run one layout and then the second layout will be the reverse direction of the first. So that makes it quite quick on change round. Really, you haven't got to start moving cones about. It's just a few tweaks on the numbers and possibly the horizontal cones, because when you're coming from the opposite direction, it might be slightly different line of sight. But yeah, once that course is then reset, it's then another course walk, so you can learn the next course again.
Okay, and do you find do you feel that you know it in any way, or is it very, very different when it's reversed in direction?
It's completely different, absolutely. You'd expect it to be fairly similar, but once you start driving it, you're realizing that places where you would have been accelerating going the other way, you're now hard on the brakes, or you've got to take a completely different line coming from the other way. Because if you're coming in from a fairly open slalom and then into a tight one, you want to be scrubbing off the speed around that particular cone in the middle of that lot, whereas before you'd be back on the throttle opening it out to go around that fast a bit. So it really does make for a different course just purely by changing direction.
Okay, so it sounds like just literally try and wipe your memory of what you saw before. It's all changed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, what you've already done is in the past, so focus on the future now.
Okay. And then maybe after you've done that, maybe you do get your packed lunch?
You generally have a lunch break after the second course. Will be time to squeeze that in, because most clubs will try and run 4 courses in a day. So yeah, your natural break period is after the second one, and then while that lunch break's happening, that's when quite often when most clubs they'll start moving cones about a little bit more. So the afternoon test will be sort of substantially different to the first one. So typically they'll sort of open bits out as well, so it might well get a bit faster in places, which is generally the norm.
Okay, so when you say 4 courses, it really is, I don't know, like an extravagant lunch. The same. Okay, now at the moment, Haydn, I can still hear you, but we've lost you on picture. So hopefully you're still there. Can you just?
Still here.
You are still there. Oh, you've come back now. Okay. Now you've disappeared again. So we'll carry on, hoping that you're still there with voice. So okay, you've now done the 4 courses. You've got to the end of the day, or the end of the competitive part of the day. What's going to happen now? Okay, well, if anybody was in any doubt that we're doing this live, you won't be anymore. Haydn is still showing as online, but has disappeared for the moment. I would suggest from my experience that if somebody is marshalling at the end of the day, then it's really nice if they can help stack some of the cones up, because the people who laid them out probably the previous day or at silly o'clock that morning would really appreciate that bit of help in stacking up the cones. Quite often someone will have a 4x4 or similar vehicle, and they'll be trundling around, loading them on the back of a trailer or similar. Welcome back, Haydn. Haydn, I can see you again, but now I can't hear you. It's like again, one or the other.
Have you got me?
I think so. I've got to the end of the competitive day. and I've just suggested, helping you out here as an organizer, that the
Can you hear me?
last group of people who have been marshalling, it'd be really nice if they actually helped stack up the cones before somebody comes around with a trailer and collects them at the end of the day. Your image is very juddery, so no, you seem to have disappeared again. Not sure if you're coming back or not. After people have had a tidy up, I would suggest that the most likely thing is that you're going to want to go and look at the results. Now, these can vary. Some clubs will organise these by having a spreadsheet and maybe a screen that you can see them on. Some people might put them up on a board. And what you can then do is have a look and see how you've done during the course of the day. Because you should now see that the total times and what are known across all types of motorsport as provisional results. So it is your chance to have a look at those, check what's there, check that you're happy that the times that have been recorded with you for you tally with your records. And then you can see how you've done during the day. Haydn, have you returned to us?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can. While you've been away,
Yeah.
we've had a lot of marshals on the last test who've merrily gone around and helped stack the cones to make it easier for the organisers to load them up on a trailer and
That's
fly
very
them
good.
away. And
Yeah.
then we've just gone off to wherever the results are being done, and we found the results on a board because the stopwatch will tell over the course of the day, and we can see the results. And the question I guess I'd ask you now is, there could be some subdivisions in those results. Do you want to talk to us about the different elements of the results? Somebody's going to be fastest overall, but what about other ways of dividing up the results?
Yeah. So basically, on all events, you'll be competing in a class structure. Generally you'll have Class A, which will be cars up to 1400cc. Class B, which is then 1401 up to 2000. Class C over 2000cc. Class D, then that gives you your production sports cars, so your things like your Mazda MX-5s, Vauxhall VX220, then anything that sort of thing. A Class E would include all your kit cars and anything that can't run in the standard classes. So if you've got a stripped out car, something like that, it then because you have to retain all your original internal trim and things like that to be able to run in your corresponding engine size class. So if you're running a car that you predominantly use for track days or something like that, but was still road league and you could still do the event, you could run in Class E. And that's the sort of typical class structures we see. Some clubs do divide that even further, but it's not as common as the sort of standard-ish classes that I've just described there.
Okay, so I guess the ones you've described are typical for the events you've been at, but it could vary around the country. They're not mandated. I guess the key thing is they're not mandated in the Blue Book.
Correct.
Different organisers have discretion to do what works.
Yeah.
What works in their part of the country.
I mean, they could go down the route of say 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, that sort of thing. If they really wanted to separate it out even more.
Okay, and I'm guessing that you will have said which class you believe you're in when you've placed your entry.
Indeed, absolutely. All the classes will be listed in your regulations, so you should be able to find which one your car fits into and select the corresponding class as you do your entry.
Okay, excellent. So we've seen the results. We've seen the thingies. Now some lucky people might collect an award along the way.
Absolutely, yeah. Depending on how many people were running in that class, we'll usually determine how many awards be given out, whether you get first, second and third in class. You then also have a fastest time of day, of course, for your absolute overall winner. Quite often there'll be an award for the best organising club member. Also a youngest driver. That's also quite a common one. Used to get quite a lot best lady, but that seems to have been phased out quite a bit in a lot of events, and quite rightly so, I think, because most of the girls are just as quick as the men. So
yes.
So I've certainly been beaten by a few and not got a problem with that. So that's absolutely fine.
Level playing field. Yes, yeah, that sort of neutrality, gender neutrality is I think more commonly being regarded as not appropriate to highlight in events. But I do like the idea of having a young driver awards.
Very much so. That's
newcomers
good,
in.
Yeah, very much in good and encouraging, and
yes,
it gives them something to aim for, and when they go
talk,
back to school on Monday morning, something to tell them out about.
Exactly. Now, talking of young drivers, I don't know what answer you'd give to this. You could speak for the general population. You don't have to speak for yourself. It's always an interesting question. If you say to, let's say, late teens or early 20s,
Yeah.
if you go out on a Friday night, what do you typically spend? Do you want to guess at the sort of range of answers I've been given to that question?
I reckon it's going to be in three figures. I would guess. Go by how much drinks cost now.
Okay, so let's say it's £100.
Yeah.
So let's say there's an Autosolo on the Saturday.
Yeah.
So if we've got somebody who says, well, I can't go and have all those drinks on a Friday night because I'm driving my car to the Autosolo on Saturday and competing in it. So the drinks are out the window. They've now got £100, let's say, saved from Friday to spend on Saturday. Typical entry fee for an Autosolo?
Typical entry fee is round about the £50 mark at the moment.
Okay, so I'll start a tally here. Okay, so we've got £50 entry fee.
Yeah.
Basic Motorsport UK RS Clubman license.
One of those is free. Just click on the link on the MS UK website and you can apply, and it will be in your inbox fairly quickly.
Yep, and you can do that electronically. Yeah, electronically on your phone. Do that. Right. So we've got £50 for the entry fee. Nothing for the license to compete. I think we're going to need to belong to a motor club, aren't we?
Yeah.
Typical motor club.
10 to 15 pounds, I think.
Okay, we'll call it 15. We'll go high, so we will call it 15. Now, I know it depends on distance, but how much fuel are we going to burn during the day?
That's a good question. I'd probably say,
including getting there,
getting there, doing it, and getting back again.
Yeah,
I'd probably see half a tank has been my sort of average. So you're probably looking at, well, today's price is sort of 40, £50 of fuel.
Okay, so we'll say £40 for that. But of course, our motor club membership stands us good for the season.
Yeah.
So if we said, just nominally speaking, we'll say we'll only take a third of the motor club membership fee. Okay.
Yeah.
And that because we're going to spread that over 3 events, so that's cost a £5. By your magic of maths, and I promise we didn't rehearse this, we now ended up doing the first event for £95 compared to the £100 plus somebody was going to spend on a Friday night out.
Indeed, and you'd probably have a better time.
And you might have a better time, yes.
And hopefully you won't have a headache after it.
So I know that people say motorsport's expensive, but relative to, I'm not saying your Friday nights, your nominal, late teen or early 20s person. Yeah, it's a similar cost, or quite possibly even cheaper, isn't it? So it does just show that motorsport can be affordable and accessible, which is what the Startline Stories podcasts are here to share with people. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the key reasons why I've done Autosolo so long.
Yes,
because it is so affordable. I'd love to go and do things like stage rallying and circuit racing, that sort of thing. But then you look at the cost of just getting to the start line, and it's just for a lot of people it is unfortunately too prohibitive. But with Autosolo, when you're that sort of low down on cost in the grand scheme of things, it is certainly cheaper than a set of golf clubs.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And just before we go to Andy for any comments and questions, because we've reached the end of the day, we must do that vital last safety check, where you mentioned earlier what you'll be doing before you go back.
I will very much just give the car a quick look over and check the tyres, make sure they're safe and legal. And,
yes.
as long as the car's all happy and in one piece, I'll quite happily drive it home again.
Yep, and that's why you brought the spare pair of rims and tyres, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And probably a statement or question of the obvious, I guess. In general, they're probably the same size front and rear, but of course, it's the driven wheels that are probably most likely to get wear on them. So your front wheel drive hatchbacks will be most likely to need to change the front, and your MX-5s, etc., most likely to need to change the rear.
Absolutely. Some venues can be a bit more abrasive than others. So typically, if you're on an old airfield with the hard concrete runways, they tend to wear the tyres a little bit more than your smooth modern car parks.
Yes. Brilliant. Well, I really hope that walk through the day, and thank you for that, Haydn, because that was really comprehensive walk through the day. But I'm hoping that just sort of takes away some of the sort of uncertainty that might face newcomers and gives them that sense of reassurance. But I think we've got a number of comments and questions that may have come in. So hopefully Andy can share those with us. I'm going to have to move something on here. I suspect that's in relation to cones that jump out when you least expect them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But when they tell you hit a cone, no, I didn't. Definitely not. No, you're lying.
There'll always be witnesses. Good one come in there. Can't quite see who it's from, but I think I recognise a Welsh dragon on it. So in this international podcast, the comment come question is: some images show a passenger on board. Do most run with a passenger or solo?
It is down to the organising clubs. It does allow in the Blue Book now for passengers to be carried. That was a change made a few years ago, because originally it used to be driver only and that was it. The only time that you used to be able to run a passenger was if it was a young driver without a road traffic licence. They needed to be supervised by somebody with a driving licence and who had experience of Autosolos or Autotests. But now the clubs can choose if they want to allow it or not. Personally, I think it's a good thing to allow passengers. It's another good way of getting people involved, because you get your mates to come along and go, come and sit in with me for the day, come and have a look,
Yes.
see if you fancy it, if you want to start driving yourself.
It's the close-up view, isn't it? And as Chris has picked up there, thank you for your comment, Chris. You're absolutely right. A junior has to run with an adult. Chris's second comment there. Often the parent will have be sitting alongside the junior to help them learn. And your final comment, maybe your final comment, Chris, I don't know, but yes, Autosolo, as Haydn's just explained, it is now down to the organiser's discretion whether to allow passengers as well. I mentioned stopwatches earlier, but Seven Oaks Autosolo have put up there. A lot of clubs are adopting the live Sapphire timing system.
Yes, very much.
What's your experience of that, Haydn?
Yeah, it's a good thing. Basically, it's a free app to download. A lot of clubs do use it. It's basically sort of tailor-made for our style of events, so the results can be entered quickly and automatically, basically at the start and stop line, and then it can be accessed by all the competitors as the day goes on, and you get live updates. Within a minute of you crossing the stop line, your time's logged on the results sheet there, so you can really see what's happening. So that picture that's just come up there, that's the timing app live.
So can you effectively finish a test, drive back, park up, pick your phone up and see how you did?
Yeah, absolutely.
You get a bit longer to work out your excuses.
Yeah, definitely. So sometimes you can see, you get there and you think, hang on, you've suddenly seen a penalty there, and you think, oh, I wonder where that was. So you have to maybe inquire about that. But generally it's a good system. The only time it can become a little bit of a problem is if something goes wrong with it and the actual system crashes. That can cause a bit of an issue during the day.
Yes.
But on the whole, it seems to work quite well.
Okay, so I'll come on to John's comment in a moment, but just to check, when you've been talking about Sapphire so far, have you been talking about times that have been taken by stopwatch or times that have been taken using timing beams? Or both?
Yeah, I mean the system will work with both.
Okay.
Timing beams will get a nice, pretty accurate timing, because obviously when your car goes through one that start line, breaks the beam, starts the stopwatch automatically. And equally, when you get to the finish, break the beam there, it then stops the stopwatch automatically.
Yes. So John's comment is it's not visible right now, but in essence he was looking ahead and wondering whether with times in events sometimes being incredibly close,
Yeah,
there's probably a greater margin for error with a Marshal
this
using
is
a stopwatch compared to using beam timing, and John wonders whether Sapphire or I guess other systems using beam timing may become used more.
I mean, this is a discussion I've had a few times. I mean, I myself coordinate the Cotswold Motorsport Group Autosolo Championship. I think as a championship coordinator, I don't think it would be right for me to imply on all clubs you must run this system, because not all clubs, some clubs have their own systems that they've been running for a long time. They're happy with them, it works for them. So to say, if you want to be part of our championship, you must run this, I don't think that would be appropriate. What I would say though is whatever their system they're running, as long as on the day it's fair and consistent, so that the timing is the same for all competitors.
Yes.
That's very much important. And I think my personal opinion is at our level of sport, if we're going to be that sort of anal about absolute fraction of a millisecond from pushing a button, it's not really what the sport's about. It's a good social event as well as a competitive, and we want to encourage friendly competition rather than outright, absolutely on the absolute millisecond sort of circuit racing style stuff, because I just don't think that's what it's about, really.
Yes, I think the key word there is probably consistency, and I'm sure all timekeepers endeavour to be consistent, and some clubs, and of course some of the sort of timing, because the beam type timing systems are what are used in sprints and hill climbs, time to a hundredth of a second.
Yeah.
But the entry fees are significantly higher than the typical £50 we talked about earlier. So I think it might be a trend. I think you're absolutely right. There've been discussions in the past about whether packages of timing gear can be obtained, and whether there are any sorts of subsidies or grants or regional associations might buy kit, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean there is obviously a cost associated with running and hiring the kit out and stuff like that. So
yes.
If we want to keep, if the clubs are able to use it and keep their entry fees at a sensible level, then absolutely go for it.
So yes, we will see. We note your comment, John, and thank you for it. So you've mentioned in there, Haydn, that as well as being a competitor, and thank you for those experiences, you're the championship coordinator for the Cotswold Motorsport Group Championship, and then we're not far away now from the Autosolo at the Shennington Kart Circuit on Sunday, the 22nd of October, and I believe you're part of the organising team for that.
Yes, indeed. I said, if you look in the regs, you'll see assistant clerk of the course against my name.
Okay,
But
what will you be doing then?
well, that won't be my only role in the day. So, but assistant clerk of the course, I basically, as it says, assisting the clerk of the course, providing him with a second pair of eyes and a bit of backup and a bit of discussion if he needs to sort of think a bit more about a decision on something and needs a bit more input. But my sort of full role over the weekend is substantially varied. It will start at about 9:30 on Saturday morning when I arrive at the club stores to help load up equipment. Or before that,
This is the day before the event then? Yep.
yeah.
It's not 24, it's not a one-day event for you, it's a two-day event.
No. And even before that, I've currently got 180 cones sat in my back garden ready to go. There's a story that goes with them that I'll tell you about one day. But they'll be in the van before that. But anyway, yeah, so help load up all the equipment, then we'll go across to the venue, lay out the first test ready to go. So that basically when we turn up Sunday morning, we haven't got too much to do in the way of course layouts. That bit's all set and ready, and we're happy.
Okay, so I've seen Shannington kart circuit being used for that purpose on a school holiday event for youngsters. What do you do to turn it into an Autosolo course?
Basically, we utilise the circuit itself as the sort of defined area, so to speak, and then we strategically place the cones around that to make it so it's not just a straight black around the circuit effectively. So it's, by the nature of the venue, it's more slalomy than just like your sort of typical square that you'd have. But there are a few sort of little cut-ins and bits and pieces where we can utilise and send the cars in to go around extra cones and stuff like that. So it's basically using all the available space to us and making it work for us, really.
Yep, excellent. And can people, if people have got an interest from this podcast, can they come along and watch on the day?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or do we need to get back to people on that one?
Yes, I would need to check with that one.
Okay, well, that's if anybody's wondering about going, then yeah, drop an email to speedonscreen@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And when we got the answer back from you, Haydn, we can share that on.
Yeah, let me confirm that, because not all events are able to allow spectators. Unfortunately, that sometimes the venue will restrict it. The venue owners, So yeah.
Okay, and we talked about competitors being in one of the three groups and spending some of the time marshalling. But actually, would you appreciate any volunteers to marshal outright on the day and add to the volunteers there?
Yeah, I mean, we always do. We have people who aren't actually competing, who are purely just marshalling. Typically, the start and finish crews, they're normally purely marshals. So yeah, we do always welcome people who want to come and help out and get involved.
Okay, and would they make contact on the club website, oxfordmotorclub.co.uk?
Yes, yeah. If you go to the club website and then find the regs on the Autosolo page, and it has the contact details of all the organisers in there and who to speak to offer your services.
Okay, so that's Sunday, 22nd of October, with the club website being oxfordmotorclub.co.uk. Thank you for that. I didn't realise that you've been competing for 20 years. What got you started?
Well, I've been involved
in any form of motorsport.
Yeah, I mean, my first experience in motorsport would have been, well, when I was just a baby, and my dad was taking me with him to stage rallies and stuff like that. So because he's always been very much part of many organisation crews, does a lot of radio marshalling, and he's also an environmental group in there as well as many other things. So I was quite often in, grew up going to events, and always been part of Oxford Motor Club. And then as I got older and more capable of shifting cones about and stuff like that. And then I was able to help out a lot more in events.
So I don't know if he's watching. I'm sure I find out if I say this. So you were there. You were there in shorts because you were young, and he was there in shorts because Simon's always in shorts.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. He likes to remain comfortable.
He does. Brilliant.
So yeah, so it's basically, I think it's purely the sort of family connection that's got me into it. And then as I grew up and passed my driving test and got my own cars, then the world was my oyster, so to speak. I was able to start entering events. I did my first Autosolo, which was a Dolphin Motor Club event at Culham, near Abingdon. There's a sort of big science park type place there, and all sorts. They used to have a layout around there that we were able to use, and that was in my Red Rover 214, and I had a whale of a time. It was basically a way that I could actually just drive the car quickly and have a mess about at that sort of young age without causing a danger to myself or the public, really. So
yes. And talking of venues, I guess there are they are many and varied. What are some of the more unusual ones that you've been to?
So I think probably the best venue, which is still in use, is probably Campbell,
Yes.
out near Cirencester way. That one's very popular. That's on the airfield there. That has a quite varied layouts on that, and there's a few sort of surface changes and stuff. It's all still sealed surface, of course, but different types of concrete and tarmac. So
Yep.
it's just a good big area. So that gives you just a nice mix of fast open bits and slightly more tight and technical twisty bits. So you've really got to work hard and concentrate on that one. One of the ones that I really used to enjoy, which we don't have them anymore, unfortunately, was at Silverstone. The sort of main car park, just as you go in the main entrance, just in on the right hand side there, which is basically a massive square. So you can really just have a huge space and just lay out a massive, nice big massive course. So you could really push quite well through there.
Yeah, I think this year I've seen pictures of, if Andy can find it, it's sat in the folder. One of them being used was the Brands Hatch sort of lower paddock, beyond Halewood's grandstand at the bottom of Paddock Hill, and that's also incorporated using parts of the rally school track.
Yes, yeah, I've seen YouTube videos. I haven't done that one myself.
Yes, nor have I. And then somewhere in Sussex, possibly, there was an old, very undulating karting circuit found. So the variety is quite huge, isn't it? It can be flat car park to something that's completely different.
Yeah, I did one a few years ago now, Campton Race Course, I think it was. That had quite a nice bit, and there was a sort of a few different heights on the layout, and you went up a ramp and all sorts of things. So that was quite exciting.
When you said Kempton, I remember seeing a picture of a ramp, although I haven't been there. And your range of cars, you mentioned a Red Rover, but I think you've had quite a lot over time, and possibly, if you can draw out the highlights, when I said earlier just about any car is suitable, I think you can probably demonstrate that with your portfolio of vehicles over the years.
So first one was my Red Rover 214, which is all completely standard. I then progressed from that onto a Mark 1 Skoda Octavia VRS, which was quite a big car with a reasonable amount of power, but was still reasonably handled well enough to get me around okay. I used a borrowed Audi A3. I then had my ultimate Autosolo car was my blue Rover 214, which I actually ended up putting an MG ZR 160 engine in, with the limited slip diff, and that was just a hell of a machine. I mean, the people that saw that one will know that it just got to ridiculous angles, that car, but always made it.
Yes,
and it looks.
I think it's fair to say, it's a shame we haven't got any video of you actually, because I think it's fair to say you're always entertaining.
There is a few few in-car videos from that still on YouTube. See my YouTube channel, Haydn 2402. There's a fair few from that. But then once that car eventually died, I then had a BMW 3 Series compact for a little bit.
Too obvious. Come on, there must be something obscure coming.
It's coming. And then after that, I had an MG ZS, which was fairly similar to the old Rover, just a more modern rounded version. Then that went, and then I ended up with probably the strangest vehicle you'd expect, a Volvo V50 Estate.
Okay, so I remember seeing pictures of this. How did you come upon a Volvo V50 Estate, and how did you decide it was the car for you for Autosolo?
Well, I originally bought the car. It was a complete impulse buy on eBay. My initial plan for it was to break it for parts, because a bit of a sideline I have is selling cars in pieces to make a few extra pounds here and there. And it came up cheap and local, so I thought that'll do. But then I ended up just using it on an event, because the car that I was going to use, which was an Audi TT, which I ended up just selling that in pieces as well, because in the 6 months I had it, I spent more time turning spanners and actually driving it.
It sounds like the Volvo won its appeal and was saved.
Yeah, so I had this Volvo sat on the drive still, so I thought, you know what, we'll just use it and just have a laugh.
So presumably it was very slow and finished at the back of the field every time.
No, completely the opposite. It's had a few class wins, and I also had a fastest time of day with it at Deptford, which was probably its biggest highlight. So yeah, it just goes to show that, you know, any car can be suitable, and it's not always about the car. It's quite often about how you drive it. So,
yes, and I think that's a key point, isn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always been fairly neat and tidy, and that tends to get results. Then when you watch and you if you see the cars that, you know, big sideways and, you know, being quite leery, yeah, that looks good. But you look at the times, and it's the ones that don't look massively fast, but then you look at the time and they've just been so neat and tidy and precise, and then that's where the results come from.
Yes, I actually learnt that lesson myself with one of your Oxford colleagues. So when I started sometime after you, Kev Belcher often used to win an awful lot, and he had, you'll know which variation, but it was one of the early Subaru Imprezas.
Yeah.
So of course he won, because it was 4-wheel drive and turbocharged. Logic might say. However, I don't know if you remember this, when he had an engine issue with it and couldn't compete in that, I was competing in my little Rover 214. What did Kev come out in? Do you remember?
214 as well.
He came out with a 214. Guess who was still absolutely at the sharp end of the field?
Oh, very, very much, Kev.
Yeah, absolutely, Kev. So no, that's really why we emphasise the fact that it's all about. I think it's all about experience and technique. Don't get, to anybody thinking of starting Autosolo, I'm pretty sure you'll agree here, Haydn, but don't get bound up in what sort of car you've got. It's how you drive it's an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, you know, pure practice, basically.
Yes.
The more you drive, the more you get used to it, the more you pick up the techniques and what you're looking out for on a course, and, you know, where to position the car, and, you know, when to be on the power, when to be on the brakes. It all just, you know, eventually clicks into place.
Yes.
Really.
So is that effectively your summary of what makes a fast driver, or are there any other hints that you'd add to that?
Yeah,
apart from just be slightly slower than you.
Yeah, you know, I mean, sometimes it counts just, you know, go slower to go faster. If anything, you know, keep it sensible. Don't be too leery with it. You know, be patient on the throttle. You know, if your wheels are spinning, you're not going forwards. So
no. So, and in a way, that's carried all the way through the day you've described, doesn't it? Because it started off with walking the course, understanding the course, not trying to remember the thing, but the key parts of it. Learn what you can learn when you're marshalling and other people are driving or you're resting.
Yeah.
And then just be neat, precise.
Yeah.
Work your way through. And I guess if you've got drop scores in the event you're doing, you can, if you push a bit harder, do you go quicker or do you run wide? There's time for a bit of experimentation.
That's it. And also another thing I would say, very much based on personal experience, is don't take it too seriously.
Yes.
If you start putting too much pressure on yourself, then you're just going to make mistakes and you won't enjoy it. Just go out there with the view of you're here to have a good time, and if you get your improved results, then that's a bonus, really.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really important thing. If you enjoy it, you'll come back, and you'll probably get quicker too.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, Haydn. Thank you very much. I've got one final. You're very welcome to stay on, and you might be interested in some bits later.
Absolutely.
One final question for you.
Go on now.
It's a bit hypothetical because we can't actually do this.
Right.
Hypothetically,
yeah,
you've got one day
to
drive one car of your choice at one venue of your choice.
Now
What car are you going to pick? And
where
are you going to take it?
I think I would go with an Austin Metro, like my first car.
Yes. Normally aspirated or turbocharged?
It would be normally aspirated.
Okay, an MG Metro, yeah.
Oh, not an MG, it'd be an Austin.
Oh, sorry, an Austin Metro. My apologies.
Wouldn't be that fancy.
Okay.
And I think I'd have to take it to Campbell, my favourite venue.
Yep.
And just give it the full beans and have a laugh with it.
Okay. Now there aren't. Lovely answer, actually. Yeah, there aren't that many of those about, but I guess a modern day equivalent, maybe a cheap micro for a few £100 or something like that.
Yeah, you can
maybe not for you, but if somebody's thinking of starting and saying, well, do I use a car I've got or do I just go and buy something cheap?
Yeah, I mean,
you could do it.
Yeah, if you're looking for the sort of modern day equivalent sort of small cars, then yeah, you're into micros, Fiestas as well before they started getting big. There's still a few Ford cars knocking around that are quite handy.
Small and nimble.
Small and nimble definitely works. Yeah, I mean like the micros and stuff that are in Class A. They are forces to be reckoned with. A well-driven one of those can very much be a lot faster on an Autosolo course than something with 200 horsepower.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we thank you very much for joining us, because what you've done is you've added a whole heap of information over and above what anybody can read about by looking at the Blue Book or looking at the Drive publication that Motorsport UK have recently released, giving information about getting started in different sports. You brought it alive. You've added those bits of details. Thank you so much. You're very welcome to stay on this podcast. But thank you, Haydn, very much for your contribution.
You are most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Well,
lovely stuff.
Thank you.
Andy, do we have any more comments popped up that we wish to put in now, or? Okay, so Sevenoaks Autosolo popped up again and said, as an example, 14 to 16-year-old club members get free entries to all Autosolos the club runs to try and help the youth into the sport. Yep, so that's absolutely fantastic. Well done, Sevenoaks and District Motor Club. With your initiative, I'm sure there will be others around the country, but that's absolutely fantastic to encourage the youngsters in. Andy Lawrence says he lost a wheel there, but I don't know where there is now. Oh, Silverstone. Yeah, so the very smooth tarmac. You lost a wheel there. Well done, Andy. Yes. And Evo Half, and I think I know who that is, says, where didn't you lose a wheel? And yes, Andy, I do remember a venue that I won't name and a car I won't name, seeking permission to go on the course to collect a wheel that you'd lost. So you've been spotted. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it's one of those three that I picked up. So Andy's kindly contributed, claiming there are a few places he's not lost a wheel, but yes, he managed to lose 3 at Castle Combe over time. And John, that's a nice sum up, saying the sport's moving on, will continue to develop, and young drivers are the future. Couldn't agree more. And the comment, I'm sorry, the comment is up. Kemble or Wharton loads to Lees. I'm not sure whether, hoping that's not about oil loss, but yeah, both Kemble and Wharton have been fantastic places. Oh, where to drive given any car? That's John's nomination. So John would take a loads to Lees to Kemble or Wharton. So yes, thank you for that message. Highlighting that context, and that completes the comments that we've got at the moment. Now, under 17 drivers, we've highlighted this with Autosolo with the examples given during the course of this podcast, and it is not always remembered that for under 17s, motorsport is a fantastic place to start. So that the youngsters can drive in motorsport before they can drive on the road. At a very high level summary, if a road traffic license isn't needed to do an event and people don't want to race a truck, under 17s are welcome. That's pretty much the extent of it. Being absolutely simple about it, just to show how many different types of sport it's possible to do below the age of 17. The one that is perhaps the if we take the Autosolo one, sorry, Andy's brought this up now. So this is an extract from the Motorsport UK Blue Book. I've got a sticker on my screen, and I'm just losing some of the words because of where my self-image is. So yes, entries can be accepted from youngsters who are aged 14 years and over. Clearly, they won't have a full RTA license. The vehicle must, by definition, be a touring car, which in summary is a 4-seat fixed roof conventional car. The words on that are slightly longer, but that's the essence of it. You think about the British Touring Car Championship. Touring car is a defined term in the Blue Book. I've got the paper copy here, simply for ease of reference. We would always recommend that people look at the online version because it picks up any updates. The vehicle must be not more than 2000 cc, and the passenger must be carried who holds a full RTA license and be experienced in Autosolos. So you tend to get various combinations. It can be parent with a youngster, it can be a club member with a youngster to support the 14 years old and over into the sport. So that is where one place that youngsters can come in is through Autosolo events. But absolutely, there are other categories too. The Blue Book has within it a minimum age table. As a steward once said to me, the most important part of the Blue Book is the index at the back, or the online version. Having the PDF version on a computer or a device is great because you can then do searches a lot more easily. And here's the table from the Blue Book that Andy's. Oh no, we've gone to the Autosolo course layouts. That is really quite difficult for me to see. So I think we've moved on from that. But as I was saying, in terms of minimum ages across any type of motorsport, there's a minimum age table in the Blue Book. Now the question sometimes arises: is it the youngsters that want to drive, or is it the parents that want them to drive? And actually, I think it's double-handed, because to the youngsters, it's great fun to learn to drive and drive before they can drive on the road. And for the parents, there's almost the safety and societal bit of it. Nobody likes to see the likes of flowers tied to lampposts after there's been a very bad accident. So if there's the opportunity to teach youngsters to control a car before they can drive on the road, that's great. It creates hopefully the culture between what's appropriate within a motorsport environment and what's appropriate on the road. Of course, it's a great activity to be out with your youngster, parent and child bonding, and with the ability, which actually we didn't talk about earlier, to share cars on an Autosolo. So where competitors are typically divided into 3 groups. That means that a car can be shared. So you've also got the opportunity for maybe the youngster to be driving and the parent to be driving and competing against each other, and of course comparing times and the inevitable banter that will take place between the two. I can hear you chuckling, Haydn, which kind of suggests to me that you've seen that occurring in practice.
I've quite often shared the car with my wife as well, and yeah, there's always a bit of competitiveness in there, but also from the sort of point of view of actually helping her improve her driving. She's learnt a lot because before she met me, she'd never done any kind of motorsport at all, and she's a lot more confident now in actually controlling a car. So
Yes.
if out on the road, you hit that patch of oil and the car starts sliding, she ain't gonna panic about it now. It's just catch it, drive it, using the skills that she's learned from motorsport.
Yes. Now, how does she rate your coaching?
Pretty good. I mean, she agreed to marry me, so I think
She listened to you on that day. She listened to you in the car as well.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it sort of got to the point where I didn't really have to sort of coach her too much in the end. It was basically just more encouragement of go on, basically.
Yes.
Get your foot down and keep going.
Yeah. Brilliant. And youngsters, I guess you must have seen some of these youngsters and parent and child combinations.
Oh yeah, no, it's very common. And there's certainly competing in the CMSG Championship. There is Chris and Ian Kent. Ian, I think he's 15, if I'm correct at the moment, who has been doing it for a couple of years now, and he really has improved so much. He really is a force to be reckoned with. He's very, very quick driver now, and that's he's learned a lot in the time from driving on the Autosolos.
Yes, and you've reminded me actually of a event for youngsters that was put on by the district council in Petersfield in Hampshire, and there was a youngster with a grandparent, I think, and the youngster was kind of doing okay, but not quite as well as he wanted to. And I remember having a word with him and just suggesting 1 or 2 things relatively gently, and he wasn't sure it was going to make any difference. And then he got out of the car absolutely beaming because he'd gone about 3 seconds faster, and it was just lovely to see that sort of innocent delight of the sport, which is back to the point you made earlier about having fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So yes, under 17s, karting's obvious. Autosolo is great. Sprints and hill climbs also possible. So yeah, as a principal, getting involved, absolutely wonderful. Just check with you, Andy, whether anybody's got any comments or questions relating to youngsters driving, or whether we've perhaps covered that off. Yep, Chris, good point. That the again, that minimum age table in the Blue Book, there are various ages at which people can be a passenger in cars, and of course those ages for passengers tend to be lower than the driving age. Well, actually, the lowest age that I'm aware of, and this is some years ago because it was my mum, is I inherited a gift that my granddad gave to my mum as a child, recognizing her first motorsport event, which was I think it was a trials event, and she took part at the age of 6 months. The actual age now is 2 years, so they've hugely increased it from 6 months to 2 years. Again, it's always worth looking in the in the Blue Book for the minimum ages. Again, to get people, as you said you did, Haydn, you've got into it through the family, through your dad's interest. And John Boardman's added a comment at the Sporting Car Club of Norfolk. So we've gone from Wales in the west to Norfolk in the east. They run taster events and have a few micros for new drivers and young drivers to use. And again, I think some of these entry level sports, that's common. I know Bognor Regis Motor Club had a micro or 2 for their summer grass auto test. So again, And maybe it's a thing that if people have got a car that doesn't need to be on the, clearly wouldn't apply to Autosolo because they need to be driven on the road. But if you've got things like grass auto tests happening, then cars that are fundamentally sound might be used. So if anybody's thinking of getting rid of a car that they don't need anymore, then think whether it could be of use to the motor club. Yep, brilliant. Okay, so we are done on the under 17s. Thank you for that. Just going back to the Autosolos, I think we've probably gone through most of those things. So we did have a segment here saying, what do you need to compete? We talked about the different sorts of cars, all going to be road cars, road legal, taxed, insured, MOT, driven to events. Scope there for anything from your few £100 micro, and then Haydn, you highlighted you're ultimately more trick you're more trick rover, and there is scope for that. Maintenance is going to be important. You don't want to break down on events. Although thank you for helping me those years ago when I did.
Indeed, I remember that well. The gearbox failure that was back up and running within 24 hours.
It was. I don't remember whether you ever saw it, but there was a period afterwards where you could look on Google Maps, and there was an oil trail around.
Still see where they covered it over with the cement dust.
Yes, exactly. And we did speak about support and help between competitors in the sprinting podcast. But yes, I think what happened was my gearbox decided to punch a big hole in the side and throw all the oil out. My few £100 Rover 214. I think, did I drive your car for the rest of the event? Did you let me drive your Rover? I think you might have done. I think I finished the event by swapping into your car.
Possibly, maybe, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I remember towing you home.
You did. You towed me home, and then in a time before your marriage.
Yeah.
You weren't doing anything the next day, and you had a spare gearbox in the shed.
That was it. And come around and fitted it, and away
So you came around and fitted it, and absolutely right. Within 24 hours of it breaking down, it was up and going again. Now I call that exceptional help between competitors.
Yeah, no, I mean
the spirit of it is very common.
Yeah, I mean that's another good thing I like with the Autosolos. I mean, we all do help each other keep the cars going. If anybody does have a problem, there's an army of people with tools to try and keep it going. I mean, I'd far rather beat somebody by out driving them than just their car's broken, really. So it's,
absolutely. So no, in general, damage is minimal. Of course, there'll be some tyre wear. Of course, we'll burn some fuel. There was a reason in a way, but we should explicitly talk about it. We didn't talk about the safety equipment that's required for Autosolos for the simple reason that there isn't any.
No, just your standard seat belts and make sure your car's in good order.
Yep.
And that is basically it. To be absolutely to the letter of what you require, a little bit of yellow electrical tape on the earth lead, just to highlight that. So in the event that Marshals needed to disconnect your battery quickly, they ain't got to go hunting around looking for certain points. They can just go, that's what needs to be disconnected.
Yes. Documentation. We talked about the RS Clubman license, which people can apply for online and have downloaded directly to their phones because it's a digital license. Club membership. Actually, yeah, a good hint to choose a local club that does Autosolos. There are reckoned to be about 60 clubs around the country that organise Autosolos. Can be a little bit. There are pockets of strength and pockets where it's not quite so much, but it means about 10% of Motorsport UK recognised motor clubs actually organise Autosolos. So it is one of the most common disciplines. One of the techniques that you being here reminds me, Haydn, I used was I looked up the Cotswold Motorsport Group Championship. Because it happened to be where I live, almost as presenting me with a calendar on a plate.
Yeah.
So wherever somebody lives, if you find a local championship, you might want to do the championship, you might not. But you can use that as a reference point as to where events might take place during the year. And then also you can go on the Motorsport UK website, use find an event, and you can use the menu choices there to find an event. That will be good. We've talked about regulations, entering events, registering for them. So some clubs will I don't know what the pattern is these days in your knowledge. Are most people doing online
It's
entries?
it's very much the norm seems to be online entry in advance. Typically, clubs will announce when the entry system goes live, so you'll get the regs out possibly a sort of week or so before you can actually enter. They'll give a very specific date and time, and then you can usually follow the link that's contained within the regulations and fill in the form online and click submit, and away you go.
Yes, and sometimes that can be the first bit of the competition, can't it?
Can be, depending on the event. Some are more popular than others. I have known solos to fill up, within a couple of hours, seeing a full entry on things. So it's very much can be a case of book early to avoid disappointment, as they say.
Yes, an old saying, but yeah, it can be, and it's difficult to know without knowing the individual events, but it can be a case of you need to be online on the date and the time that entries open.
Yeah, I mean that's another
getting a place.
Yeah, I mean that's another good reason for joining championships, because you'll then get the details of the events, in advance. So you've got the information ready. It's not going to be a surprise to you, and you're not going to miss out. So
yes. And would you say signing on for events, how does that roughly split between signing on in advance online and doing it on paper on the day?
It seems to be more clubs now do the online signing on. It just saves the clubs a lot of time on the day, really. Everybody's done all the paperwork in advance and ready to go, really. So
brilliant. Anything you think we've missed, Haydn, in painting a picture on Autosolos?
I think we've covered most things, to be honest. I suppose you could look at the future of Autosolos, but how it's going to evolve. I think, like John Boardman was saying with his comments, possibly the timing systems might continue to change, perhaps. But I think in essence, it works really well as it is, and has done.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It is a successful part of our sport.
It's very popular, and it's nice to keep it in the format it is, because it just works. If you start messing about with it too much and making it too competitive, and putting the monies up for, we don't want it to be, you've got to have some real trick car to be able to do it. It should just be appeal to the masses.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where it fits in Motorsport UK's streetcar initiative, where effectively they're promoting cars. So we thank you again, Haydn. We'll say cheerio to you. Thank you again, and hopefully people joining this podcast will come along on. Hopefully some of them may have entered for Sunday the 22nd of October at the Shennington Kart Circuit, or specifically to find out more about Oxford Motor Club, you can go to oxfordmotorclub.co.uk. So thank you very much, and we'll say good night to you, and we're very close to saying good night to everybody else as well. If anybody's got thoughts on future topics that they'd like to see covered, for those live on YouTube, then there's still time to add those in the comments. Otherwise, please email speedonscreen@gmail.com. Thank you ever so much for watching and listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast and to the YouTube feeds. In terms of what comes next, well, we're not really going through the alphabet, but we think the letter T is likely to feature next time. Either with Targa Rally or Trials, both of which have events coming up soon. So whilst it may be the end of the season or around the end of the season for some of the events that are mainly based in the summer, of course, various forms of rallies and trials take place throughout the winter. And we will bring you a further episode of Startline Stories very soon. So yes, please like and sign up for future things. We will put them on social media again, and we look forward to seeing you soon. But for now, it's goodbye.
Motorsport UK TV, the home of unmissable British motorsport video. Bringing you all the action from the British Championships. Taking you behind the scenes. Giving you top tips to succeed in every discipline. Showcasing the best equipment. And much, much more. Visit motorsportuk.tv today and make sure you never miss a moment.